my sister Susie, she finally got to a spot where she goes, all right, look, I know for a fact that Nanny was the name we called our grandmother. She said, I know for a fact that Nanny is not sitting upstairs right now, up in heaven right now, watching what's going on right here. And no sooner did she finish that sentence when a picture fell off a shelf above her and hit her in the head. And when she reached down to pick up the picture, it was a picture of Nanny, our grandmother.
This is Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God, those moments when heaven and earth collide. Today they collide, lots of times they collide here. Encounters, not just encounters, rich encounters with God, Mary, saints and angels here yet, because we're talking to Rich. Rich has stories. He has some great stories here. Actually, we met Rich and his lovely wife Bonnie just recently in Medjugorje, and we'll talk about our experiences there. He had some of his stories come from there. But we're going to start with stories about his mom. Talk about connected to the Holy Spirit. Get ready.
There were several different things that happened. My mom would tell a story one time, and it kind of reminded me from some of the episodes I've listened to. She was following my grandmother, and they had come up to a stop sign, and they had to make a right turn onto this busy 4-lane road. And my grandmother just, after she stopped, she just turned and went out. And my mom saw this station wagon full of kids coming straight at her. Okay. And she just closed her eyes and said, Jesus, protect them. And when she opened up her eyes, the station wagon was in front of my grandmother and everything was fine. Now, she didn't see the car go through, but she said there was absolutely no way that she was not going to hit her.
Yeah.
She just pulled right out in front of the station wagon and they were fine, and,
did you hear that story from them before you heard the podcast and all the times people have shared that type of story?
Yes.
Yeah. Were you surprised at how often it comes up on these episodes?
Yeah, I was, but I wasn't. I've always believed in miracles. Always believed that the supernatural was there. So my brothers and sisters used to give me a hard time for being the perfect child. Right. I never got in trouble. I never broke any rules or any of the rest of this. So, but really, what happened was whenever my mom would go out and bust my sister doing something wrong, she would take me. And so I would be there to witness my mom getting hints from the Holy Spirit on where my sister was. Because there's no way she could have known these things were going on. The first time, or one of the main times I can remember, she was supposed to be downtown with her boyfriend at a movie theater. My mom's like, she's not there. I said, Mom, why would they go somewhere else? Of course they're downtown. She's like, no, she's not there. So we go. She gives her the benefit of the doubt. We drive downtown. We're living in Billings, Montana at the time. And we drive all around downtown, down by that theater. We can't find this guy's pickup anywhere. She says she's out at the drive-in. Well, at the time, there was a drive-in theater, and it had 4 screens, and they showed nothing but rated R or above movies. Okay, and of course, my sister, I think, was 14 or 15 at the time. And so my mom said, she's out at the drive-in. And so we drive out to the drive-in theater, and you would come up to this theater, and the gate, you would come up to the gate, and then each of the theaters were surrounding the area, and then there was like one central concession area. All right, so we get up to the gate, and I was like, Mom, they're not even going to let us in. We're going to have to pay to get in. She's, no, they'll let us in. And she tells the lady, look, my daughter is here, and she's underage. She doesn't belong here. And they're like, okay, just pull over by the concession area. So we pull over by the concession area, and we get out, and I'm like, there's like 400 cars at every one of these theaters. And I said, Mom, how are we going to find Susie here? And she goes, I know where she is. Just follow me. And we went over to this one theater. We went down 4 rows and over to the middle, and there was the truck.
Okay. Wow.
I mean, not wandering around looking anywhere, nothing. Holy Spirit told her exactly where Susie was. Exactly where my sister was.
And you saw this kind of repeatedly with Mom? Mom just had this knack?
Yeah. There was one time my mom was a manager at McDonald's, and it was crazy. The McDonald's she was working at ran out of buns. Which, when does a McDonald's run out of buns, right? And so she had to go to one of the other stores in town that was owned by the same company to get a bunch of buns. We had a van, so she went over to pick them up. And after she got them loaded up and was starting to head back to her store, she got told, make a right. And she's like, no, make a right. So she made a right turn. And she went down a ways, and it said, and the Spirit told her, make a left. And she made a left. She went down a ways and basically did this for about 10 minutes. And finally the Spirit said, pull up in front of that house and park. And she pulled up in front of this house and parked the van. And about a minute later, my sister and 3 of her friends came walking out of the house and got in the van. Okay. And we come to find out that they had ridden out there with a friend to a party at this house. And when they got inside there, they knew this was not a good place to be. They didn't want to be here. And they're trying to figure out, how are we going to get out of here? They didn't want to call their parents. Nobody had cell phones at those days, and they're like, they were worried. It was a bad situation. Right. And so they're standing there talking by the living room window, and Susie, my sister, looks out the window and she goes, my mom's here. And her friends are like, how did your mom find us? And Susie goes, God told her.
Wait, how did you hear that story? How does that get?
My mom told us about it the next day.
Did she?
And then we also found out, my sister found out later that apparently there was some girl there at that party who had decided that Susie had offended her for some reason and was going to stab her.
Oh, geez.
But my mom showed up and they walked out the door. Wow.
Did you ever talk to your sis about it?
I've talked to Susie about it. Susie is very strong in her faith. I think she's Baptist, faith that she goes to, but she knows that God sent my mom out there to get her.
And totally Holy Spirit driven. So what is it? What was it about your mom? What was her? Obviously, she's received gifts a little extra than most of us get. Why? Yeah. Why do you think God did that for her?
Well, we were, we lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and in Billings, Montana, and both of the places, the churches that we attended were Spirit-filled Catholic churches. And so we would go to prayer meetings, during the week, or I think they were Tuesdays or Wednesday nights, where they would pray. And I grew up listening to people speaking in tongues and healings going on and stuff like that. So it was very strong. Very, very strong faith. My grandmother on my mom's side was Italian, Catholic. She was orphaned as a child, so she grew up actually in a Catholic orphanage with the nuns. And so I can remember as a kid hearing about Medjugorje from my mother and my grandmother. They talked about it. My grandmother, being Italian, she loved Padre Pio. He's the greatest saint there ever was. But I can remember hearing about Medjugorje, my mom talking about about what was going on over there and so forth. And I'm talking when I was young, so it had to have been in the 80s when it was all getting started.
Let's pause right about here. Then more with Rich, including the head clunking story with his sister that's coming up, what led to it, and the reaction after, coming up in just a moment here. Quick Patreon shout out. Thank you so much, Tony and Betty Alexinas, for supporting us through Patreon and have been for a number of years. And just thank you for being so good to us. We appreciate it so much. If you'd like to do what Tony and Betty have done, then, you can come here to episode 233 and find the Patreon link and click your way through. Or go to patreon.com and search for Trapper Jack. Whatever amount you say is right is the exact amount that's right. Thank you so much for that support. Appreciate it. All right, let's get back to more with Rich. Rich encounters with God, Mary, saints, angels.
We were sitting at a kitchen table. It was after my grandmother had passed away. And in the church that my sister attends, they don't believe that people who are in heaven are paying any bit of attention to what's going on down here. They're not interested in their family members or anything like this.
Or there's some sort of curtain that they aren't allowed to see what's going on here, perhaps.
Well, it's either not allowed or she kind of presented it like they're not concerned. It's like, I'm here, I'm with God, I've got all this going on, I'm just going to focus on him. I'm not going to
kind of a huge assumption they would no longer care, but okay. All right.
Yeah, I was I was like, yeah.
And our teaching is that those in heaven are praying for us, are actively involved in our lives, obviously.
Exactly. Yep. So we're having this discussion, and I can tell you, her side didn't go over very well with the other 5 siblings in the family. And we were, so it was a pretty excitable discussion. And she finally got to a spot where she goes, all right, look, I know for a fact that Nanny was the name we called our grandmother. She said, I know for a fact that Nanny is not sitting upstairs right now, up in heaven right now, watching what's going on right here. And no sooner did she finish that sentence when a picture fell off a shelf above her and hit her in the head. And when she reached down to pick up the picture, after rubbing her head and so forth, to pick up the picture, it was a picture of Nanny, our grandmother. So all the rest of us were like, see, we told you.
Wow.
She knocked that picture off to hit you in the head to go, yes, I am.
Wow. Any reaction from Susie?
She doesn't talk about it, doesn't like to talk about it now.
So she's still in the other camp, though. Still in the other camp.
Yeah, it was pretty funny, and we every once in a while get brought up at a family Christmas or something like that, and she just kind of shakes her head and doesn't add anything to the story or say anything about it.
That's great.
If you knew my little Italian grandmother, she would do something like that. That's it.
Those must be fascinating conversations. When the family gets together and goes, remember the time? I mean, that's just, it's crazy time to most people. Mm-hmm. Okay, where to next?
All right, so the next part, we'll go on to my own experience. When I was in the Navy, and my first wife and she was pregnant with our third son. She had never had chickenpox, and she got exposed to and contracted chickenpox in the first trimester. Okay. And the problem with a pregnant woman having chickenpox in the first trimester is that the baby can't avoid getting chickenpox, obviously. The baby gets the chickenpox
in the womb.
And what in the womb.
Okay.
And it's it's forming arms and legs and hands and so forth. And if it develops a pock in one of those areas, it can deform the child. Okay. So her OB sent her in and had it tested to make sure, yes, it was chickenpox, and yes, it was an issue. And then they're telling us basically, all right, you're gonna have to abort this child. There's no, and we're like, okay, well, what are the problems? Well, they could have a short leg, they could have a stumpy arm, they could have and it was all physical stuff. You know what I mean? Health, their heart would be fine, their lungs are fine, internal organs, brain, all that stuff would be fine. But we sat there for 10 minutes explaining to this OB that abortion was not a choice for us. Okay, this was not an option. All right, it was not threatening to the mom. It was not going to cause her any issues or anything like that. So we would not abort the child. So, okay, we left that appointment. She calls back, I think 2 days later, to get another appointment, and she gets told they're considering whether or not they're going to take her case. Because the OBs didn't even want it. This is how certain they are of that she should have an abortion, that they won't even take our case. I reached out to the church we were attending, to the priest, and he said, let me call you back. And he called me back after a couple minutes, and he said, there's a practice that is run by a Jewish and a Catholic doctor, and they won't ever consider abortion, and they're willing to take us on as a case. And we're okay. So we schedule an appointment. We start visiting with them. And of course, Tony is born and he's fine. Absolutely nothing wrong with him. Okay. Well, the one thing we know about chickenpox is that you can't have it twice, right? When Tony was in second grade, chickenpox went around his school and Tony got chickenpox.
Does that mean he didn't? No, they said he did.
He did not get chickenpox in the womb.
He didn't.
He was protected. He was protected in the womb and did not get chickenpox. He was not exposed, even though his mother, and they, like I said, they did lab work and everything to prove that she had chickenpox.
And if the mom gets it, the baby always gets it?
Every doctor that I've talked to about it was like, oh yeah, no, they get the chickenpox. There's there's no way the virus doesn't pass from the mother to the child.
So the general assumption is somehow that child was protected.
He was protected. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Where to?
We've had, obviously some good St. Anthony things. In fact, when we were in Medjugorje, I had bought some rosaries and I'd given myself, my wife one that had been, I bought them from the Vatican and they were blessed by the Pope. And I'd given it to Bonnie, and she had it out and had put it in a carrier. And when we were out going around, she thought she'd left it downstairs in the prayer area when we gone down for the first time we went down to be with Maria, the visionary. And we're looking around for it, can't find it anywhere. We've turned the room upside down, can't find it anywhere. Went down to the front desk to see if somebody turned it in. No, well, please keep your eye out for it and stuff like this. And so we go back up to the room to start looking around again. And I said, St. Anthony, please come around. Something's been lost and cannot be found. And I turned around, and on the behind the beds on the wall, there was a ledge. Okay. And sitting on the ledge in between our two beds was the case with her rosary in it.
Had you looked there a few times?
Oh yeah, we had looked there before. Yeah, and it's not like we had to lift something up to see it. It was just sitting there on the ledge. You couldn't have missed it. And it's and it was a bright blue case on a white shelf.
God is good.
Yeah, Bonnie was like, I don't believe this, and I said, I do. And she goes, I know, I do too.
Yeah. Can't not. That's awesome.
She's actually the one that turned me on to the podcast.
Oh, well, good for her. See, looky there.
And it was the one she played for me was the Satanist who didn't understand what the beads were that the people were doing outside when he was trying to do an abortion, and when he turned around, the baby was born.
Yeah. They didn't have time to sacrifice the baby before it was actually born. Yeah.
Yep.
That's an amazing episode. Zach King. I don't remember what number it is, but is that one the Old Black Magic? I'm trying to remember what the name of that one was.
I think it is the Old Black Magic. Yeah.
It's amazing, its transformation, and it began. Well, there was kind of a process there, but when somebody placed a miraculous medal, Mary right on it, in his hands, and then suddenly everything went black. He sees Mary. Mary turns him around. There's Jesus, and he's done with satanic. He's all in on the faith. Just it's an incredible story. Now he's up spreading the word.
Yeah. And the son of mine who avoided the chicken pox is Anthony.
Nice. Very nice.
So when we went, because we went to the Church of St. Anthony.
We
on
did.
That trip. Loved it. When we went up to get blessed by Father Pieter, Bonnie, this was the first time she's not Catholic. She'd never been blessed by a priest before or anything like that. And she went up and got blessed by him. She said, man, I was tingling all over. I could feel it everywhere.
Yeah. That's a very special priest we were allowed to be blessed by there. This is the priest that's going to announce to the world, here comes secret number one, and it's going to happen. So this is a very special priest, obviously. So how was your week? I know we talked a couple of times along the way and everything, but overall, you like it?
The good thing is both of us came away from there changed. You know what I mean? We're definitely deepening our spirituality and working on finding out what God has willed for us to do. There was this part of me that wished we were still there. You know what I mean?
It was great being with you there in Medjugorje. It was good going up Apparition Hill with. Weren't my son and Danny great getting me up there? It was incredible.
Yeah,
it really was how they directed all that.
I went up. I went up with you guys. I was there climbing the Apparition pile of rocks.
Right.
With you.
Yes, you were. Congratulations.
Yeah. When I went back the second day.
Yeah.
And did so I did all the joyful, sorrowful, and glorious mysteries. And as I'm coming down on the glorious mysteries, and I'm saying them, I would stop and and say the different. I'm looking at my rosary, and I was like, "Is it changing colors?" That's that looks really weird. And then I kind of lifted up because my glasses auto tint, so I kind of lifted them up, and I was like, "No, that's not it. It was just the auto tint. It was looking weird." Now that we're home, it's the crucifix and the medal are different.
More what?
They were silver. Now they're not gold, but they're definitely yellowed. They're yellowish.
Okay. But changed.
You know what I mean?
But changed. Yeah.
And you can see the difference between them and the links. Going to the rosary.
How cool is that? Because you heard Rosie on that one episode. Hers changed. Well, it was in the process of changing over the days. It was kind of cool. Not unusual, though. Not unusual. Yeah.
I honestly think Satan was attacking us on different things, trying to interrupt and trying to get in the way of the experience that we were having, because he knew that we were going to have such a great experience. Like the second night we were down for the with the visionary, she's having the vision, and I'm starting to get this, strong sense of incense. and everything.
Nice.
And then somebody's phone started ringing, and everything went away. I mean, I lost it right there, and I was I was so mad about this phone ringing, and then I realized I totally let myself get distracted from what was going on because of a phone. You know what I mean? That was me not staying in the moment and staying in what I had. You know what I mean?
It was, in the end, it was like, I tell everybody, it's the best thing we've ever done. It's the best thing we've ever done. As far as something like this, best thing we've ever done. It was just, it was tremendous.
Hey, there's a cardinal. Two female cardinals.
Just landed?
Just flew by.
They just flew by?
Yeah.
Well, a little message from heaven there.
Right out here.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, we have several rose bushes, and while we were gone, our Lady of Guadalupe rose always looked kind of, it was growing and it flowered a little bit and stuff like this. But while we were in Medjugorje, it grew like 16 inches.
Wow.
And it's just exploding with flowers.
Wow, that's nice. A little message from Mary. That's kind of cool. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, a little thank you, I guess.
and I wanted to thank you. My wife just stuck her head in here and go, Richard's he's been on the disciple level of Patreon for a year now. And I'm going, oh, that's right. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And just, to make that jump from listener to Patreon family member, if you will, what caused that?
Listening to your show, I was like, well, there's actually good reason to believe. You know what I mean? So it was like, I was a nuclear engineer in the Navy. I do IT stuff now. I've always been a very, scientific and technical guy. And in fact, I kind of joke. I've had people look at me before and go, when I tell them I'm a Christian and a Catholic, they're like, well, I thought you were smart, without saying, I thought you were smart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's
like, what's the matter with you?
You don't have to be, it's not a requirement that you be dumb to be Christian. Okay. So I was like, there's reasons for this. And so, I've actually been able, because of, listening to the podcast and stuff like that, I've been able to look at things like Father Georges Lemaitre and the Big Bang Theory and, a lot of the science behind the miracles, for Guadalupe and for the Shroud of Turin and the Eucharistic miracles and all of that. None of that was anything I knew before,
And you brought up the Big Bang Theory because it was a priest who came up with that theory. Yeah.
Yeah. Father Georges Lemaitre, and I actually did a lot of research into that. And I don't know if you knew, but he went to Stanford University and walked around Stanford for a year with a guy named Einstein, explaining his theory to him. And when they got done with that year, Einstein came away and said that this was the best theory he'd ever heard.
Yeah.
This is Einstein. E equals MC squared guy says Lemaitre's theory was the best thing he's ever heard. Yeah. Right?
Imagine that. And when you take, you talk about, the brains, when you take a look at St. Thomas Aquinas, for example, one of the most brilliant minds ever. Some of the most brilliant minds that have ever been have stumbled upon this thing and got, this Christianity thing, it kind of works.
Yeah, I think that, they might be onto something here.
Yeah.
Bonnie initially turned me on to the podcast, and I tell you, it changed my relationship. It made me start to really address, am I doing what I need to be doing? And am I, where I'm supposed to be? And the answer was no. I need to, strengthen my relationship with God and get myself back where I should be. And so, I thought, it was great that I was able to benefit from the show, but it would also be great if other people were able to benefit. So I wanted to make sure you got the support you needed so that you can keep doing the great work that you do. And, in addition to being a supporter, I pray for you every morning as part of my morning routine for you and all the people who listen to the show.
Oh, God bless you for that. Thank you.
I share a lot in I don't know why why priests don't preach this from the pulpit, that these these miracles are occurring all the time, and the scientific backing of them all. You know what I mean? Because I've had several discussions with atheists or agnostics who've gone into whichever, and when I would explain something, they just kind of look at me. They don't have an answer for it.
They don't know what to do with it.
Yeah,
they don't know it exists. They don't. They just, and so when they listen to it, they kind of put it on a shelf, and it's like, no, you can't put that on a shelf.
Yeah, you can't. I'm like, look, if you're going to tell me that science is the answer, the way this stuff goes, well, the scientific process says if I have a theory, I come up with a theory of whatever I'm going to do. Then I go and look for empirical evidence that proves or disproves that theory. And if I find evidence that disproves that theory, I have to throw the theory out.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if I have a theory that there's not a God, and then I go out and I see things like Our Lady of Guadalupe and the tilma that never decays, and the AB blood on everything that's associated with Christ, and all of those things came about before anybody knew there was a blood type. So how could they fake that with the most rare blood type there is?
You can't.
Of AB.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's crazy.
There's no way.
In fact, we're going to be, and you're referring to Eucharistic miracles and all this kind of stuff too, where,
exactly.
bread turns into heart tissue every time when it turns into something else, left ventricle. And it's on and on and on. And you're right. Why? Yeah. And I mentioned this, I think it was on a Men's Morning Light, that I've yet to be, in all my years, I've never heard a priest spend his homily time just talking science. Just talking to science, which is, it's God's science. He created the science. It's not like you're going off the page here,
No.
I'm going to be talking to a gentleman in Australia named Ron very soon, and he's got incredible documentation on the Eucharistic miracles. And now what he wants to do, he's written to the Pope saying, okay, we have the shroud. Is that type AB blood there too? Let's see, is that link, is that going to happen yet again? Those same markers on the blood, which there's blood in Eucharistic miracles, which says, odd, there seems to be a mom but no dad. That keeps happening again and again. Let's see if that matches up on the shroud, because when you do that again, you show that to an atheist or to an agnostic or to a lukewarm, and it has to it should make them go, and it opens up a door. It opens up a door.
Yeah. Exactly. Most people would think, and what I've read on it is most people would think that Jesus's blood type would be O negative, because that's the universal donor, and so everybody would be able to receive his blood. But in actuality, when we become and follow Christ, we are invited to die to ourselves, our human beings, and become part of the body of Christ. And the AB blood type is the universal recipient. So it can take any kind of blood into it. If somebody who's AB needs blood, they can get it from A, B, or O.
Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting?
So
abiding in Him, kind of thing.
Exactly.
That's very good. Very good. What's our big takeaway, Mr. Rich?
I think it's praying. We were told pray with our hearts, but also pray constantly. My mom prayed constantly, all the time. I mean, and for everything and for anything. The littlest thing, we'd be going to go bread shopping at the bread store, and it's packed. There's no place to park or anything. And so my mom would say, "Okay, God, we need a parking spot." And somebody would pull out right up front, right in front of us, and we pull in and park. And every time she would say, I need a gap to make a right turn here. And suddenly there was a gap and she could make a right turn. She prayed for everything. And Einstein said, you can either go through life thinking that nothing is a miracle, or you can go through life believing that everything is a miracle. And I think my mom believed everything was a miracle. She prayed for everything. She prayed constantly. Before she did anything, she prayed. And I think that's the biggest key.
Thanks, Rich. Continual prayer. How do you do that? Saint Therese, I remember, Little Flower, she was the one who said, you just make everything a prayer, little things. She said, she wrote this book. Nobody knew who she was at the time. And she talked about, she wanted to be a saint. She actually wanted to be a saint. But she knew that the saints seemed to do big things. And that's not me. I'll just do little things. And so just picking up a pencil off the floor, and she made that a prayer, because she was making the world a better place and offering it to God. And throughout her day, no matter what she was doing, cooking, cleaning, whatever it was, she just turned it into a prayer. So no matter what you're doing during the course of your day, raking leaves, okay, making the world a better place, it's a prayer, whatever it happens to be. Driving to pick up the kids, it's a prayer. Going to the grocery store, it's a prayer. Everything becomes a prayer beyond just the traditional sit down and pray thing. Love the head clunking story. Thought that was great. Something just kind of falling off the wall there. It reminded me, actually tonight, Elizabeth and I are going to a fundraiser. It's a fundraiser I spoke at a few years back. And interesting is that the organization is dedicated to Our Lady of Guadalupe. And when in the course of my 45-minute talk or so, I mentioned Our Lady of Guadalupe, and at that moment, something fell. It was a sign with somebody's name on it, who is the one who dedicated the organization to Our Lady of Guadalupe. So again, it's one of those little moments where heaven says, "Hi there, how you doing?" Just hi, how are you? And you got to love someone so connected to the Holy Spirit that they allow the Holy Spirit to basically drive them to in front of a house, and then Rich's sis comes out, or to walk through a sea of cars at a drive-in right to where that truck is parked. You got to love someone that connected. Thanks, Rich, for all your stories. Appreciate that. And maybe seeing Medjugorje again down the road. I'm sure there will be more trips coming, and we'll have more information about that, I think, in the near future, I do believe. And I continue to read Mariana's book. She's one of the visionaries, and it takes you back a little bit, because keep in mind, it was 41 years ago when the apparitions in Medjugorje began. It was a time when the communists, it was Yugoslavia, and it was a time when communism ruled, and boy, were they harassed. They wanted to put an end to this nonsense of this woman from heaven and all this craziness. And these kids were harassed, and they pretty much pushed Mariana out of Medjugorje to Sarajevo, where family was. And in school, she was constantly being pulled out of school during the course of her day by communist police and interrogated day after day. I mean, just crazy, to the point where her fellow students were just, what did you do? That kind of thing. And this went on for years, this kind of harassment. And maybe that's why John Paul II had such an open heart to Medjugorje. This is something I did not know. Mariana was in Rome, and she was in this large gathering where Pope John Paul II was, coming out and blessing people. And he actually walked by Mariana and blessed her and walked, and he doesn't know who she is. And he's just walking on. And someone draws his attention to the fact that girl over there, Mariana, this was back in 86, 87 or so. That's one of the visionaries from Medjugorje. And he looked at her, and he came back to her and blessed her again. And she kind of joked that I apparently needed 2 blessings, Later that day in her hotel room, there was a note, John Paul II asking her to come and meet with him. I think it was at his summer residence. And so she did, and she got kind of emotional about it. She said, when I looked into his eyes, it was similar to looking into Mary's eyes. And he gave her a similar feeling to when Mary would appear. He said to her that he would have gone to Medjugorje when at first he was totally up to speed on what was going on there. Keep in mind, this began in 81, and this again is like 86 or 87 for this conversation. And he's got a special heart for Medjugorje in Yugoslavia. He remember, grew up in Poland and all the persecution of communism there, so he understood what she was undergoing. And he said, I would have been there long ago if it wasn't for the fact I'm the Pope. You got to kind of play the role a little bit here. And he said, he told her, take good care of Medjugorje. It's the hope of the world. Which reminds me of what St. Padre Pio did back in 64, 65, when he wrote to the Visionaries of Garabandal, Spain. Something kind of similar things were going on then. And he wrote a letter to them, didn't sign it, just said, the world doesn't believe you, but I do. And he says, and by the time the world does believe, it's going to be too late. There are a lot of parallels between Garabandal and Medjugorje. But Conchita, who was the visionary, who at the next apparition said, I got this letter. I don't know, somebody wrote me this. And Mary said, oh, that's Padre Pio. Later they met and became friends. So Padre Pio met all the seers then. So have all the visionaries of Medjugorje met the popes over the years? I don't know. You hear stories, but nothing I could confirm. And as I was reading the book, which is called My Heart Will Triumph, something Mary said back in Fatima days, she was talking about all the visionaries out there, and she said, be careful of who you believe. And this is a visionary that not everybody believes, saying, be careful about who you believe, because she said, be careful about people who just want to strike fear into you, is the way she put it. Be careful of those who are just all about spreading fear. Just kind of take that as a final note on this today. Okay, so what is your story, your encounter story? Let me know here at touchedbyheaven.net. Thank you for your support again through Patreon, patreon.com. Thank you for that. Let's see, what else can I thank you for? Oh, just for being you. Just thanks for being you. I'm Trapper Jack, that'd be me, touched by heaven, everyday encounters with God. And I just want to remind you, if there's one thing you can say about me,
He did not get chickenpox in the womb.